Welcome to Real World Peaceful Parenting, a podcast for parents that are tired of yelling, threatening, and punishing their kids. Join mom and master certified parent coach Lisa Smith as she gives you actionable, step-by-step strategies that'll help you transform your household from chaos to cooperation. Let's dive in.
Welcome to today's episode. I know I say this every week, but today I'm super thrilled because I have a very special guest joining us today. I want you to meet Brandon. Brandon is a former, perpetually tired dad of two young boys. And as a result of becoming a father, Brandon embarked on a mission to solve the age-old challenge of getting his kids to sleep through the night. So, I just got your attention, listener, right there, right? You're awake. Wait a minute. There's a way to solve this problem. Yes, there is. And I am bringing it to you today, right here on Real World Peaceful Parenting. So Brandon's journey began when he and his wife found themselves desperately searching for a solution to their sleepless nights after their oldest son was born. Faced with the frustration of not being able to find high-quality sounds that were both long enough and free of interruptions, loops, and fading, Brandon decided to take matters into his own hands. With an innovative idea in mind, he created a podcast with perhaps the world's most straightforward title, 12-Hour Sound Machines. And little did he know that this simple yet brilliant concept would resonate with people from all corners of the globe. Almost overnight, his show began to captivate listeners worldwide, catering to a diverse range of needs and applications. And as it turns out, people everywhere struggle to find focus, calm their anxiety, and achieve restful sleep amidst the chaos and distractions of everyday life. Brandon's podcast has become a beacon of tranquility, providing a much-needed respite in the form of immersive sound experiences that lull listeners, try saying that 3 times, lull listeners into a state of relaxation and peace. So today, Brandon joins us here on the Real World Peaceful Parenting podcast. I am super excited to have him here and for Brandon to share his expertise on the fascinating and important subject of sleep and kids. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, what an intro. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, super excited. Sleep is something that my husband and I have been militant, and I literally mean that word. We have an 18-year-old, and we have been militant about him getting uninterrupted sleep since a very young age. No phones in the room, long stretches of, deep sleep, because we understand that it releases growth hormone, decompresses the brain, allows it to grow, detoxifies the brain. And as a result, we have a 6'4" young man who, is very physically strong. And I attribute a lot of it to genes, but also a lot of it to high quality sleep. So tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, that all makes total sense, that finding the ability to create a space in which you can have prolonged stretches of deep sleep is incredibly helpful. What I hear mostly from my listeners is how the show has been helpful for sleep for themselves, but then for their babies, for their really little ones. It's an interesting perspective and take that you just shared of how that could carry past being a newborn, then toddler. That's when most parents think about I need to assist my kid with sleep, but I think they let that go a lot once the kid kind of creates some independence in their life. And that's interesting that you've continued to stay actively involved with your child's sleep even through his adolescence and growing years. That's interesting. It doesn't surprise me at all that that's helped a lot.
Yeah, even now he sets a sleep goal of a time to go to bed each night, and I make sure that he's meeting it because I was a biology major in college and I learned a lot about growth hormone and how and when it's released. And interrupted sleep, prevents the growth hormone from being released. So it's important that we set up good sleep hygiene from the start and then really follow it through all the years. Walk us through, Brandon, how your life changed when you started the podcast with your young boys and their sleep.
So I've been using brown noise in particular, which I'll talk kind of what that is and how that's different than white noise here in a second. But I started using that for myself years ago. I don't know, 7 or 10 years ago, started streaming that mainly for focus and for work. I have some tinnitus in my ears, meaning I have some ringing in my ears. And so I don't do well with silence. And I'm a very fidgety person. This all connects. I need to be doing something passive with my hands to engage my brain. That's always been the case since I was little. this was like the auditory version of that, as I could kind of create this constant, I call it a fidget toy for your ears is what I call it. I've heard people call it like a blanket for your brain. It kind of zeroes you out and focuses you in. So that's how I started using it. And then started using it for sleep too. I used a box fan, like a physical box fan for a long time. And then started using brown noise, and it was really helpful for me. And then when I had our first baby, we from the get-go experimented with different things. He never had like a silent room just so we could make some noise outside of his room and not wake him. But the reason I created this show was so that he could have something that would be long enough that he could sleep through the night. Just like you said in my intro, is that was the issue, is there was stuff online, but things were like 8 hours usually. Some were like 9 or 10, but I was like, I'm trying to get my baby sleeping for 12 hours and I don't want him waking up. And then a lot of things, even within those 8 hours or 10 hours, you could hear an audible loop. Things would like click or loop, and it was very noticeable. And that wakes you up, man. Your brain notices tiny little differences if there's a really consistent noise happening. So anyways, I just built this brown noise that really I tuned it to my ear. I was like, okay, more lows, less highs. Yep, that's like a frequency I like. And then posted it as a podcast simply because there are file upload limits for songs. But there wasn't for podcasts. So I was like, well, great, let's do that. And so I put it online, streamed it into my son's room, and it really worked for him. And then again, just like you said in the intro, it really did organically resonate very quickly. It was a congruence of things. Also, this was kind of like I was one of really the first ones that happened to do it as a podcast. Spotify in particular was really pushing for podcasts at that time. I think, I got some algorithm boosts and people just started finding it. And I see two large groups. I see people using it just like as for themselves and for their babies to sleep. And there's a lot of science behind why and how it helps. But let me just talk quickly about kind of brown noise, white noise, pink noise. Those are my three big ones. And what I see with parents in particular is that white noise seems to be the most helpful for babies. That kind of is the gold standard for babies, simply because white noise is the gold standard for sound cancellation, for sound masking. That's the frequency that cancels out the most other ambient noise in an environment most effectively. All of them have sound canceling properties. Now I use brown noise all day. I have it turned off now because I'm here. But like other than this, I have brown noise on all day because I have babies outside my room, little toddlers, and they're loud. And so there's good properties to all three, but white is really that gold standard because it cancels out noise really well. And I have a lot of parents that use that. But white is like, everybody's familiar with that. It's like a TV static, very high frequency. Brown is a very low, lots more bass, a more focus on those lows. You kind of reduce it or eliminate the highs in the frequencies. And then a pink is just a combination of those two. Different people do different things. The science, it's not in what frequency it is. You tend to see these buckets of people calling these higher stuff white, lower stuff brown, and the stuff in the middle pink. But what I did with mine was literally overlay brown and white on top of each other to make pink. So it kind of has properties of both. And I've seen a lot of success with people, both for themselves and their parents, in all three for three different reasons. Different brains resonate differently with different kinds of sounds for different kinds of reasons, whether that's focus or ADHD. There's parents who use it for children with autism. It can be very effective to help cancel out sounds and distracting noises in like a very busy environment when people go out into public, things like that. So that's the main difference between brown, pink, and white. And those are my three most popular episodes and what I see people using for babies and kids a lot.
I like it. The idea of it being a fidget toy for the ears really resonates with me. I have a son and husband who both have ADHD. We have a ton of fidget toys around our house sitting on desktops and tabletops because my son has to be doing something with his hands in order for his brain to work.
Yep.
And so I love the idea of thinking about this as a fidget toy for the ears because, part of the process, let's talk about this for a moment and how your podcast could help with this. Part of the process of being able to go to sleep is being able to lay down, and it starts really as an infant, being able to lay down and self-soothe to sleep, right? Relax the brain long enough for the sleep cycle to take over. And I can see where introducing this at a very young age could be very beneficial in helping that child move away from dependence on the parent to soothe to an ability to self-soothe. This is how the parent can get out of the room at bedtime, right? Is the child needs to have the skills of being able to self-soothe. And I'm imagining, I don't have any science and you'll tell me, I'm imagining that your podcast could help the parents accomplish this goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So the show itself is not obviously, and you're not supposing this, but like is not magic in and of itself. It's not this like you turn it on, it's like, whoa, my baby sleeps. But what it does is it enables those things, exactly what you said. So one, as an adult self-soothe, you have to slow down your very complicated and multi-layered thoughts, your frustrations, your worries, your anxieties. For a baby, it looks more like removing distracting noises, so sights and sounds. So a darker room can help. There's science behind whether it should be pitch black or not, and there's people in both camps, but a darker room and then an environment without variability of noise. So that was what distraction looks like to a baby is a clink, or you're watching a movie outside and there's an explosion or something like that. There's variability in the noise. And if you even that out, that's a baby's version of slowing down what are as adults are very anxious and complicated thoughts, so that the sleep cycle, like you said, can take over. So my show, there's all sorts of sounds out there. There's other podcasts now, much more. There's YouTube. There's people have been doing this for a very long time to help them and their babies fall asleep. My show has just garnered a lot of attention for lots of different reasons, but one that I think, and people should just try it out. Just listen to the episodes and then listen to others as well, and you'll find one that works. It does not work for everybody. There are people who come to my show and they'll leave comments saying, I've tried every pink noise out there and this is the one. And then there are other people who I'm sure I don't hear that they go to another show and they say that, like, I tried this other guy, but this one works for me. So see what works for you and then see what works for your children. If you're using it for your children, what do they sleep best to? When are they waking up? Every parent has played the game of like tweaking this, tweaking that, honing, fine tuning this to get their child to sleep the best. And certainly my show is one of those tools that can help with that. And for those reasons.
I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask you, as the parent, let's talk about parents. I've had a fan in my room for probably 35 years. I'm, usually when we go on vacation, my husband and I land in a city, get in the rental car and go straight to Walmart to buy some cheap $10 fan. I have the fan app on my phone, which is terrible. It makes the weirdest noise. It doesn't sound like a fan at all. So I'm thinking that I need to immediately switch over to your show while traveling, but also at home. But let's talk about parents and sleep. And, I know on your website, it says that, your audience is travelers, remote workers, students, doctors, listeners on the autism spectrum, insomnia sufferers, and parents with babies and young children. So let's talk about those parents.
Yeah, I think parents, I mentioned this a bit, but that it's helpful for two reasons. It's helpful, of course, for your babies, for the things we just covered in the last topic, and then also for you. I mean, it is incredibly important. Of course, you put on your oxygen mask before you put it on your child. I mean, that goes for the sleep schedules as well. Like, you got to take care of yourself too. And with a newborn, like, listen, you can use white noise, you can get the room the right darkness, but like, it's going to be brutal for a while. Like, kids are going to wake up. It's going to be a hard season. You're not going to get much sleep. But as you figure out what works for your baby, also figure out what works for you. And, and maybe this is part of the routine for your baby and for you, whether that's white noise for both, or white noise works for your baby, but a fan works for you. I got all sorts of fans. I have like an oscillating fan, a bathroom fan, a box fan. And Lisa, I'm developing an app right now, and one of the functionalities will be able to record your own sounds so that you can take sounds from your environment that work from home, and then you can take them with you. So if you have a great fan that just works great for you at home, you can record it and then mix it with whatever else in the app and then use that, because some things are just so, like just so. And it's important you find those things. So whether that be a routine for your child or for you, this helps both. And it's important that you take care of yourself as you figure out what works for your child too, for sure.
That's awesome. I can't wait for that. Bring your home on the road with you. Noise.
Yep.
I do have a very specific fan in my bedroom, and it's too expensive to buy it and leave it in hotels. So that would be very valuable. Okay, so let's talk about this. I'm listening, I'm driving to work right now. Let's say I'm liking what I'm hearing. I want to try your app specifically. I like the idea of the brown noise. Walk a parent through how to get started. Walk me through exactly what I do. How do I broadcast this in a bedroom at night? Walk us through, sort of give us an in-service on how to get set up.
Yeah, really good question, Lisa. Actually, in any interview I've done, nobody's actually asked that. Like, practically, how does a parent take a next step and implement this into their routine? I like that question. So it's a podcast. I'm developing an app. I'm also building a smart speaker app, but like right now it's a podcast. I mean, by the time you release this, it'll be a podcast. And so you go to any podcast player that works for you, type in 12-hour sound machines. You'll see lots of playlists pop up. People have created different things. Go to the actual show so you can see all the episodes available. Go to the show itself and just one of the reasons I'm building an app and some other tools is because podcast feeds are not great for sorting and filtering. So it's just one big list. Unfortunately, I have like 125 at this point. So it's tough in the podcast feed. But if you poke around and find some things that work for you, you can go to my site and I have what's called an episode index. So it's 12hoursoundmachines.com. And if you want to go to the episode index /episode index, and you can say, I want to sort by type and by use. So rain noise for babies, nature noise for sleep, whatever it may be. And then you see a subset. And that's just much more helpful to be like, listen, I really like rain noises. That's been helpful. Let me find what else he has that's rain. And then there's individual links there to go to the various popular podcast platforms and say, well, that's that episode. And so find what works for you. Maybe go to the site and see, well, what else does he have, related to waterfalls? And then you can play it. A lot of people just practically play it through their phones because you just set it on your nightstand and play it. That's certainly not the most pleasing way to do it, because it's a small speaker. So you can do a nice smart speaker will get a much more full, encompassing, work much better for sound cancellation, masking, things like that. Some people have sleep headphones that they wear, or their speakers that slide right under your pillow. Whatever it would work for you, find the sound. A lot of people put it through their smart speaker so that it's a nice full sound, and then you can use it. The kind of a tip or a trick that I'd share is that it can be tough when you use a smart speaker, whether it's Alexa or Google or whatever, or Siri. It can be tough to grab the episode that you like. A lot of times it's not an intuitive user interface, and you'll say, play this, and they'll just play the show from the first episode. And then you have to say next to go all the way to the one you like. So what you do is, most people listen to my show on Spotify, but wherever you do, you can, I think this is actually unique to Spotify. Most people listen to it on Spotify. You create a playlist that call it whatever you want. Say, my son's name is Cooper. I say Cooper's brown noise. I put the one the brown noise that works for me into there. And then I say, hey, Alexa, hey, whoever, play Cooper's brown noise. And it grabs that playlist in that one single episode. And that seems to be most helpful for people trying to navigate, oh man, it's tough to navigate things and find them with your voice. That seems to help get straight to it. And I'll also say, as it relates to finding what episodes work for you, I actually have, for brown, pink, and white, I've combined them with a lot of things. Brown noise plus a cat purring. And one thing that's specifically helpful for parents is I've combined white noise with a heartbeat. And so the heartbeat is sound masking, but the heartbeat seems to really be just immediately soothing for babies because it obviously mimics the sounds they hear in the womb. That is the initial science behind why white noise works for babies at all. Is it's supposed to mimic the blood whooshing through the mother's body, and that's very similar to frequency they hear in the womb. I also have it inside the womb sound machine, and there's a much deeper heartbeat, and it's like you're underwater kind of in the amniotic fluid, and that also really helps babies. So there's a couple more tips for parents.
I love it. I think you gave us the $1 million tip with that, creating the playlist and putting the one episode in there.
A lot of people struggle through before they find that. They're like, oh, I'll just create a playlist with the name of what I want to call, ask for. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you gave us the real insider scoop on that. And I see on your website, you do have brown noise and shower, white noise and pink noise and heavy rainstorm. And what I'm impressed with is how hard you're working to dial in a sound that works for people.
Yeah, my audience, thank you for saying that. My audience is incredibly engaging. Believe it, it's so weird. It's 12 hours of noise, but people reach out because it solves a felt need. They had a problem, this solves the problem, and they reach out with their thanks, with their suggestions, with their issues of hey, you did white noise plus cat purring, but the cat was way too loud. Can you dial that in? And people are just very engaged. Also on Spotify, they release this new functionality where you can ask Q&As and there's polls, and people are super engaged. And the number one driver behind the new episodes that I post are people telling me what they want. When I start getting a couple, 3, 4, 5 of the same things, I just start putting it on a list, and that's what I go grab next because people want to hear it. So yeah, for sure. If you're listening and you want to hear something in particular, I say it in the episode descriptions and show description, reach out. And that's no joke. I read every email, and when I start getting ones that pile up, I'm like, okay, I'll just do that next. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. I mean, sleep is important. In our family, I feel like we talk about sleep all the time. My husband is a insomniac, and so we're always working on little tweaks and different, medications and things we can try. And we are always working on sleep in the Smith household. I mean, it's a regular topic of dinner conversation at our house and we report to each other how good our sleep hygiene is.
Yeah, it should be a regular conversation. It should be way more of a conversation than it is. I think people just take it as it comes and they say either I'm good at sleep or I'm not. Like I don't sleep well, or oh man, I sleep like a rock. And that's just what the people who don't sleep well just kind of take it as it is. But it's like, no, there's things you're doing that you could eliminate those things and it could immediately get more helpful. It doesn't mean insomnia is not a real thing and people don't really struggle, but there are a lot of people that some real low hanging fruit that if you get rid of, you could sleep a lot better. And if people are familiar with the Huberman Lab podcast, I don't know if you've ever listened to that, Lisa, he's a huge proponent of brown and white noise. In fact, I keep reaching out to my marketing team, like, let's hook up with this guy. He's incredibly popular and he loves brown and white noise focus and for sleep, because he, of course, as a neuroscientist, like is a huge proponent of sleep, and he talks about the properties that brown and white and the science behind why it's helpful. But yeah, I think it should be more of a conversation in families for sure. So that's good.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, and we report how we slept the night before, and do we if it went well, why, and if it didn't go well, why. And my son will go off to college in the fall, and I'm pretty sure most of our daily conversations are going to be about sleep hygiene because it's almost like a hobby in our household. And we try a lot of different things, all wanting to get, those long periods of REM sleep and, cycling through. And, I have a son that plays a sport. He's going to play a sport in college. And a lot of performance is dependent on how good of sleep you're getting over the long haul. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's important to us. I too am a big fan of Andrew Huberman, listen to his podcast regularly, would love to be on his podcast. Yeah. I like his mission of providing, solid science to people for free. I really am a fan of that. I feel like that's what I do on this podcast is providing parents with, tips, support, and coaching on parenting, how to stay regulated for free. And it's my contribution to the world. So that's funny that we're both. Awesome. And actually, to be totally honest with you, let me tell you this funny story. I first heard about brown noise on his podcast. And shortly after you reached out to me, which was like, okay, this is a sign that Brandon needs to come, right? Because it was a confluence of information happening at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like he's talking about more and more. Just last week, he posted something else that was like, check these out. There's lots of free tools out there, brown and white. It's helpful. And as you say, you and your family are always tweaking tools to try to get prolonged periods of sleep. The thing that just popped into my mind is, there's all sorts of things you can do to do that, to create an environment that's conducive to sleep. Like my podcast is just one of those things, but it's an important thing to not wake up from noise, from a car slamming a door outside or a loud animal or whatever it is. If you're sleeping in complete silence, that is a key contributor to breaking those long periods of sleep. And so sound is just one element, but it's an element, an important one. And shows like mine that provide these kind of long, consistent sounds can definitely be helpful.
Well, and let's talk about this for a second as further evidence to the power of what you're producing. You say on your website that on Spotify, you're in the top 1% of all podcasts shared globally, which speaks to the need, right, that you're filling. Because to be in the top 1%, as a fellow podcaster, I know how hard that is.
Yeah.
And you are really solving a problem out there to be in the top 1% with 12 hours of brown noise.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting that you honed on that figure in particular. Most people see that because we just broke 100 million total downloads. And most people see that, or the 300,000 downloads a day, and they're like, whoa. But that to me isn't the stat, number one, that's most important to me as, a host of the show. But what's the most telling to me of the trajectory and the momentum of the show is how much people share it. Because people, when you meet a need, people talk about this so passionately, because if you have an issue and this solves the issue, like you can't sleep and now you found this thing, you're like, oh my gosh, I slept a full night. I slept uninterrupted for 8 hours. You tell people about that. Like that's someone else says, man, I could not get to sleep last night. And they're like, well, let me tell you what worked for me because it helped me. And then it gives them social capital to be able to like share something that helped because it's probably going to help the other person. So that to me is an important metric that most people skip past is how much people share it, because a lot of people share it.
Yeah. Well, when I know something that works, I want all the people I care about to know about it. And elusive sleep is one of those tools or skills or unmet needs, I guess I would say, that it is not socioeconomic or race related or income or job, or it can be age related. But if you've struggled with sleep, you're pretty desperate for solutions. And when you find one, like you said, you want to share it with everybody out there, which was really my motivation for having you on, is to, here's a tool, it works. There's numbers to say it works, right? You're on Spotify, 300 downloads a day. And so I wanted everybody that listens to Real World Peaceful Parenting that struggles with sleep themselves and whose kids struggle with sleep and getting to sleep and staying asleep, I wanted them to hear about this tool and have a chance to use it.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on, Lisa. You asked really good questions that got to the heart of a lot of things, and I think provide some really practical tools for parents. Another thing I'll say for parents in particular, if you have smart speakers in their room, another thing that's helpful, if you create that playlist that's something that's really intuitive to say, the kid can invoke it by themselves with their little speaker in their room. That's what my 4.5-year-old does now. He can say, play Cooper's Sound Machine, and it turns it on. And so that's also really easy too, is if it can be more hands off. A kid can do it on their own. So also helpful.
Oh, that's super helpful too. Okay. One last question, because this just popped into my brain as you were talking. So let's say Cooper is turning on his playlist, and as a parent, when I find one episode that works, do I just go back to it every night, or do I need a variety?
Well, it depends on what works for your kid. What I hear overwhelmingly is that people find a noise and they stick with it. Like they are live or die Pink noise. Like I'm thinking about creating like a social campaign that's like Team Pink, White, or Brown, because people are super into their noise. And that I also have people that reach out all the time. Like they love to try out every new one and see what works. And then they don't like. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I thought it could get no better, but you just posted Rain on Pavement. And that's the best rain I've heard yet. That's my new one. So there is that behavior, but especially for a kid where in just about everything, consistency is key. What I hear for parents with kids is like they just have a noise and they stick with it. You put that, but if it's helpful for kids, yeah, you could swap out dynamically on your phone in that playlist. Just put a new sound in there, and then when Cooper would say play Cooper Sound Machine, a new one would play instead.
But in general, you find that with kids, it's find the one that works and stick with it. Totally. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that too. I'm a big fan of routine and consistency. Kids want to know what's expected of them. It helps them feel loved. And, rules and consistency helps them feel loved, know what's expected, and feel safe. So that's the other thing I would imagine. I was anticipating you to say, find the noise that works and stick with it, because then that becomes a part of my bedtime routine. I hear that noise and I cue into self-soothing into sleep.
It's a full-on trigger. I mean, there's no doubt, like you listen, you have a certain noise that once you turn it on, that's sleep. And when you hear it, it's like I keep saying blanket, but it seriously is just like you're covered in that noise. It completely eliminates all the other small creaks and different sounds in your room. And you're just like, your brain is ready for sleep. That's a real thing.
Okay, Brandon, as we wrap up, in addition to brown, pink, and white noise, tell us one last tip that you wish you would have known when you first became a parent.
When I first became a parent, I wasn't sure where you're going to go with that question. When I first became a parent, I would have told myself, this is totally off the topic of noise, but what I tell new parents, my friends who are having a kid for the first time, I always say, you hear a lot of people who are past their like young child ages. They have older kids that are grown or out of the house. And you see them looking back with very rose-colored glasses saying, oh my gosh, when they were one, that was so amazing. And every moment was magic. And lots of moments are magic. But one thing I wish I would have known, that like, it's also going to be really hard. Of course I knew it was going to be hard. I knew parenting was going to be hard, but I didn't realize how much I was going to be hanging on by my fingernails and like barely making it. And my wife and I comment on that a lot. The whole phrase is just so true of like, the days drag on and the years fly by, because these early years are hard, and that's okay. That's what I tell people, whether you agree with that or not. It's okay that it's hard. It's okay that you don't love the really hard and intense periods of very young child rearing, but there are absolutely highs. The highs are highs, but the lows are low. And I think when you hear people speak with all these years of hindsight, it feels like there's all these highs with like a couple lows. It's like, oh, everything is magic, but it's not all magic. It's a lot of poop, and it's hard sometimes. And that's so okay to grind through that. That's what I tell people when they're having kids for the first time.
I love it. I love it. I couldn't agree more. And, that's why one of the mantras here at Real World Peaceful Parenting is progress, not perfection, because, it's a dynamic, ever-changing relationship. Just when you think you have one figured out, they evolve to two. And just when you get two under your belt, they evolve to three. And, now I'm in the other end of 18 and it also feels very hard and challenging. The worries are different. I can tell you, right? I'm no longer worried my kid's going to choke on a grape, but I have a whole new host of worries, and so
more complicated worries, I'm sure.
Much more complicated, I have to say, which could be its own podcast. But yes, I really encourage parents to think about progress, not perfection, because we're just not going to get it right all the time.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, but you definitely helped us today in the area of sleep and thinking about rest and never give up on looking for ideas. That's what I really took away from today is never give up on the quest for a good night's sleep. And it's work worth doing. I can say personally, whether it's in the quest of being a good parent, staying regulated, or job, or working out, it all starts, I think, at a baseline of a good night's sleep. So, okay, podcast listeners, I hope you enjoyed our insightful conversation today with Brandon. And as a fellow sleep-obsessed person, his story really resonated with me. It's incredible how Brandon took matters into his own hands, isn't it? I mean, creating a 12-hour sleep machine, how crazy is that? Today we had the opportunity to delve into the challenges parents face when it comes to sleep and kids and their own sleep. And thanks to Brandon for being here. He shared his wealth of knowledge and expertise with us, providing valuable strategies that can make a difference, a world of difference in creating a restful sleep environment for your family. And what I really want to encourage you all to focus on is a restful sleep environment for the whole family. Make it a priority, set some limits around it, talk about it. There is a huge importance of consistent bedtime routines, and the power of immersive sounds can contribute to that, right? And it's also incredibly important to promote healthy sleep habits for children and for the parents. Remember, we talk here all the time on, we have to model for our kids. Kids don't do what we say, they do what we do. So if you're staying up late, if you have poor sleep habits, your kids see that, then they're not going to value sleep as much. So it's very important that we promote healthy sleep habits for the whole family. And I think Brandon did a great job of emphasizing how a good night's sleep can positively influence our overall well-being and enhance our ability to handle the demands of daily life. So it's a reminder, today's podcast served as a reminder that prioritizing sleep is critical, not just for our little ones, but for our own self-care. And I was particularly impressed with the way Brandon's podcast has resonated with people all over the world. It's remarkable how his simple yet effective approach has helped individuals find focus, alleviate anxiety, and achieve restful sleep amidst the chaos of modern life. It serves as a powerful testament to our universal need all around the world for tranquility and calmness. As we wrap up today's episode, in addition to thanking Brandon, I want to really encourage you, listener, to sprint, not walk, run to 12-Hour Sound Machines, his podcast, and his website for a rejuvenating auditory experience. You're not going to be sorry. You're not going to go wrong by visiting the podcast, download an episode, use the tip that he gave us, create a playlist, download an episode, and give it a try for your kids. Turn it on and see what happens. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain from helping your kids get quality sleep. So let's take Brandon's advice to heart and create an environment conducive to rest and rejuvenation. And thank you for listening today. Brandon, thank you so much for being here. Any parting thoughts?
Nope, not at all. Thanks so much for having me, Lisa. I really appreciate it. It was a helpful conversation, and I hope that your listeners were able to take some helpful piece of practical advice away.
Yeah, I have no doubt that they're really loving this episode. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. And until next time, I'm wishing you peaceful parenting and sleep.
Thanks for listening to Real World Peaceful Parenting. If you want more info on how you can transform your parenting, visit thepeacefulparent.com. See you soon.